I wasn't supposed to be home that day. After 3 weeks in Chicago handling a client's construction project, I decided to surprise my son, Daniel. He was 28, strong, independent, newly married, the kind of young man any father would be proud of. I texted him the day before, but he hadn't replied. I thought he was busy with work. When I pulled into the driveway, the lights were off. His car wasn't there. But something felt off. The front door was slightly open. My stomach twisted. I called his name, my voice echoing through the empty house. No answer. Then I saw it, a stack of unopened mail on the counter, and among them, a hospital letter, stamped, urgent. My hands trembled as I tore it open. The words hit me like a bullet. Patient, Daniel Harris, admitted to intensive care unit, critical condition. For a moment, everything went silent. My knees almost gave out. My boy, my only child, was fighting for his life, and I hadn't even known. I dropped the letter and ran out the door, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might stop before I reached the car. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew one thing: no father should find out this way. The drive to the hospital felt endless, though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. Every red light was a curse, every second a knife twisting deeper. My thoughts spun between panic and guilt. How long had he been there? Why didn't anyone call me? When I burst through the ICU doors, the antiseptic smell hit me like a wall. A nurse behind the counter looked up, startled. "I'm looking for Daniel Harris." I gasped. Her eyes softened, and that softness terrified me. "Are you his father?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Please follow me." We passed rows of machines beeping like distant alarms. My legs shook with every step. Finally, she stopped at a room. Through the glass window, I saw him, my son, pale, motionless, tubes and wires everywhere, his chest rising only with the help of a ventilator. I pressed my palm to the glass. "Danny," my voice cracked. The nurse whispered, "He was brought in 2 nights ago. Found unconscious at home. There was no emergency contact on file." No contact? My mind reeled. How could that be? I was his only parent left alive. Then it hit me, his wife, Claire. She must have removed my name. I hadn't seen her since the wedding, not after the arguments about money, the house, and what she called my old-fashioned interference. But standing there, watching my boy fight for his life, all those arguments vanished. There was only one thought left in my head: someone was lying, and I was going to find out who. The next morning, I returned to my son's house, the same house I'd helped him buy. Snow covered the front steps, untouched. No visitors. No neighbors. Just silence. I still had the spare key from years ago, and when the lock clicked open, a rush of cold air met me, mixed with something else. Expired food, damp carpets, abandonment. Inside, the living room was chaos. Unopened mail stacked like forgotten memories. A wedding photo still hung on the wall, my son smiling, her hand on his chest, but now, that smile felt hollow. I noticed fresh flowers on the table, though. Someone had been here. Then I heard it, a door creaking upstairs. My chest tightened. I moved slowly, step by step, until I reached his office. There she was, Claire, wearing black, her back turned to me. She jumped when I spoke. "Didn't expect to see you here." Her eyes widened, then softened into a practiced sadness. "I was just picking up some things." 2 nights, I said. "He's been in the hospital for 2 nights. Why didn't you call me?" She hesitated. "I didn't know how to reach you." A lie. My number hadn't changed in 20 years. I glanced at the open drawer behind her. Inside, stacks of unopened envelopes, medical bills, insurance forms, and something else, a sealed letter, my son's handwriting on it, addressed to me. My throat closed. "Why is this here, Claire?" She froze. "It's nothing," she whispered, trying to move past me, but I caught her arm. "You left him alone," I said quietly, "and now he's fighting for his life." For a second, her mask slipped, anger flickered in her eyes. "You think you know everything, don't you?" she hissed. And that's when I realized, this wasn't grief. It was guilt that I stood there, the letter trembling in my hand, Claire's perfume still hanging in the air like a warning. She'd left in a rush, slammed the door, muttering something about lawyers, but I barely heard her. All I could see was my son's handwriting. Strong, deliberate, the kind he used when something truly mattered. I tore the envelope open. The first line hit me like a punch. Dad, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. My knees went weak. I sank into the chair by his desk, surrounded by the quiet chaos of his life, unpaid bills, scattered photos, a half-finished cup of coffee long turned cold. I read on. I didn't want you to worry, but Claire isn't who she says she is. The company she pushed me to invest in, it's a front. Money's missing, and now she's scared. I'm scared too. If anything happens to me, don't believe what she tells you. I kept the proof safe. Proof? I looked around frantically. Drawers, shelves, under the desk. Nothing. Then my eyes caught a framed photo, me, him, and his mother, back when life still had color. Behind the glass, something metallic glimmered. I pried the frame open, and a small USB drive fell into my palm. My heart pounded. This was what he meant. I drove home like a man possessed. Plugged it into my laptop, and what I saw drained the blood from my face. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, signatures. All linked to Claire. And then, the last file, a video. My son, sitting right where I was now, recording himself. Dad, if I disappear, please don't let her get away with it. The screen froze on his face, eyes tired, but defiant. My hands shook as I whispered to the empty room. I won't, son. I swear I won't. The next morning, the sun rose like a lie, pale, distant, indifferent. I hadn't slept. My son's words looped in my mind like an echo I couldn't silence. Don't let her get away with it. The USB sat in my coat pocket, a burning weight I couldn't ignore. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I wanted to look into her eyes first, the same eyes that once smiled at our family table and called me Dad. Her house was only a few streets away, the one she'd bought after needing space. I parked outside, watching her through the window as she made coffee, casual as if she hadn't left my son to die. I knocked. She froze. When she opened the door, she tried to play innocent. Mr. Harris, you shouldn't be here. Neither should you, I said quietly. But you were at his house last night. Why? She blinked, her fingers tightening around the doorknob. To collect my things. Try again. Her jaw clenched. You've got no idea what's going on, do you? Oh, I have an idea, I said, pulling the USB from my pocket. And I've got proof. Color drained from her face. She tried to grab it, but I stepped back. You stole from him, used him, and when he found out, her voice cracked, sharp and desperate. You think I wanted this? He was going to turn me in. They said they'd come after me too. They? She realized she'd said too much. Her eyes darted toward the phone on the counter, but I was faster. I slammed my hand down over it. You're not calling anyone, I said. You're coming with me to the hospital. You're going to look him in the eye. For a moment, she looked small, frightened, even. But then her expression hardened. You don't understand, do you? She whispered. If he wakes up, we're both dead. The words hung in the air like smoke, those words, if he wakes up, we're both dead, kept replaying in my mind long after I left her house. The police would have been the logical choice, but logic didn't fit this nightmare. I needed answers, not another layer of bureaucracy that would bury my son's truth under paperwork. So I drove straight to the hospital, the USB still in my coat pocket, my pulse pounding like a war drum. When I entered his room, the steady beeping of the heart monitor was the only proof he was still alive. Tubes, machines, the faint scent of antiseptic, it all felt wrong for someone so full of life. I took his hand. You were right, son, I whispered. You were right about her. But who are they? The nurse came in quietly, checking the 4-line. You his father? She asked. I nodded. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. You might want to talk to his friend Marcus. He's been calling non-stop, says it's urgent. Left his number. Marcus. I remembered him from years ago. Business partner. Too slick, too confident. I stepped into the hall and dialed. He answered on the first ring. "Mr. Harris," he said, his voice cautious. "We need to talk. It's about your son, and Claire." "I already know she lied," I said. "What I don't know is why she's afraid." There was a pause. Then he said, "Because the company wasn't hers, sir. It was his. And your son, he was laundering money for people you don't want to meet." I froze. "No," I whispered. "He wouldn't. He didn't have a choice. They threatened her first, then you. That's why he tried to pull out. That's why they came for him." My knees felt weak. The hallway seemed to tilt. My son hadn't been greedy, he'd been trapped. Protecting her. Protecting me. And now, those same people thought he was dead. For the first time in years, I felt something colder than grief, vengeance. By nightfall, I had Marcus's address scribbled on a crumpled napkin. Every instinct told me to stay away, but a father's instincts are twisted things when his child lies between life and death. I drove for hours through the city's industrial outskirts, where streetlights flickered like dying stars. The building Marcus had mentioned was a half-abandoned warehouse by the river, its windows boarded, but not empty. 2 black SUVs were parked outside. That told me everything I needed to know. Inside, the air reeked of oil, sweat, and silence. I found Marcus in a corner office lit by a single lamp, his tie loosened, his nerves visible. "You came," he said, like he'd been expecting a ghost. "You said you had more answers," I said. He nodded and opened a folder on the desk, photos, financial sheets, digital logs. "Your son tried to fix it. He gathered evidence against the people running this. But before he could deliver it, someone got to him." Claire panicked and ran. "Who's behind it?" Marcus hesitated, eyes darting to the window. "You don't want to know their names." I asked who, I repeated, my voice steady. He swallowed hard. "A man named Petrova runs the money. Eastern contacts, political strings. Your son was his accountant, not by choice. Petrova wanted a clean face, a veteran's son with no record. Your boy fit the part. And Claire? She was the lure. They used her to keep him quiet." My stomach turned. "Where is Petrova now?" Marcus leaned closer. "He's watching. Always watching. He knows you're here." The light flickered. Tires screeched outside. Marcus froze. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. Before I could respond, the window behind him shattered. A gunshot cracked the air. Marcus fell forward, eyes wide, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. I dropped to the floor, glass raining down. In the distance, an engine roared and faded into the night. For a long moment, I just knelt there, staring at Marcus's body. Then I picked up the folder, slipped it into my coat, and whispered, "You're not dying for nothing." When I looked up, the reflection of my own face in the shattered glass didn't look like a grieving father anymore. It looked like a man with nothing left to lose. By dawn, the city was quiet again, too quiet for a man carrying death in his coat pocket. I hadn't called the police. What could I tell them? That my son was framed, his business partner murdered, and I had a folder full of blood-stained evidence? They'd bury it before they'd believe it. I'd seen the system chew men like me alive. This time, I wouldn't play by its rules. I parked my car overlooking the river, pulled out the folder, and began reading through every page. Offshore accounts, falsified charities, encrypted wire transfers, the kind of corruption that didn't just happen in backrooms, but in boardrooms. Petrova wasn't some shadowy ghost. He was everywhere, and everyone owed him. Then I saw it. My son's handwriting on one of the pages. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I thought I could fix it without hurting anyone. But they're watching. Don't trust Claire. My hands trembled. He'd known. He'd seen this coming. I slammed the folder shut and started the car. Claire's name was still carved into my mind, not with anger now, but with purpose. She wasn't just a pawn, she was the last thread tying me to the truth. I found her hiding in an old motel off the interstate. She opened the door in tears, eyes red, mascara streaked. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "I told you last night, you're going to face him," I said. "Alive or dead, my son deserves that." She shook her head. "You don't get it. Petrova's not just one man. He's a system. He owns the cops, the banks, the people you think can help you." "Then I'll burn the system," I said. Her lips trembled. "You sound just like him." I stepped closer. Maybe that's the point. Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, not from the sky, but from engines. 2 black SUVs were approaching fast. Claire's face went pale. "It's too late," she whispered. "They found us." I turned toward the window, my son's last words still echoing in my head, "Don't let her get away with it." I reached for the folder. They came for the wrong man this time. The SUVs cut the highway like black sharks. I could hear the diesel thrum through the motel floor, a low, patient threat. Claire's hands were still shaking, but her eyes had that terrible, grown-up clarity that comes from choosing one impossible thing over another. We had 10 minutes. Maybe 5. I didn't waste one on fury. Anger is for people who have the luxury of shouting. I needed a plan that survived a bullet. The folder went on the table, evidence arranged like a grim deck of cards. Names. Dates. Wire routes. The courthouse permissions Petrova paid for in hush money. Each sheet a tiny guillotine. "You go to the garage now," I said. "Take the rental. Drive south. Do not stop for anything. If they follow, don't slow down." My voice was even, my years had taught me how to make commands feel like options. Claire nodded, the decision made. "And you?" she asked. "I make sure the men in the black SUVs don't leave this town out of their suits," I said. She wanted to argue, to insist on being useful. Instead, she helped me tape a small wireless drive into my coat, the one with copies of everything, the insurance policy for truth. We moved like conspirators, not lovers, though sometimes the two look the same, 2 people leaning toward a dangerous future. The motel lobby felt like a stage prop, cheap plants, dim lamp light. Outside, the engines drew closer. I stepped into the hum and let the air hit my face. The first SUV parked. 2 men in gray suits got out, scanning. They moved like trained predators, polite on the surface, lethal underneath. I walked calmly toward them. Not because I wanted to be brave. Because surprise is better than courage when the odds are stacked. My steps were a metronome. My breath quiet. The city behind me slept, oblivious to the ignition. "Sir?" one asked, voice like a question wrapped in a threat. His hand hovered near his jacket. I smiled, slow, unthreatening. "You fellows lost? You look expensive." I tapped the drive under my coat, feeling the cool plastic like a promise. This is where the script changed. I wasn't the outraged father anymore. I was the architect of exposure, patient, precise, and deadly in the way someone who's lost everything can be. "Do you want me to write the final scene, the confrontation that detonates the cover-up and forces truth into daylight?" The rain stopped right before the moment, the wet street shone like a courtroom floor. Engines idled. The men in gray suits closed the circle, polite as executioners. Claire was gone, a dark blur already on the highway. The wireless drive beneath my ribs felt small and impossibly heavy. I could have run. I could have screamed. Instead I did something worse for them, I spoke where everyone could hear. A news van idling nearby had a live line open, a freelancer had set it up to film the motel's silly neon. I stepped between the SUVs and the camera as if I belonged there. The men tightened. The lead one cleared his throat. "Sir, step away." I lifted my hands in the practiced calm of a man who has both nothing and everything to lose. "You're about to make a mistake," I said, and the mic picked me up. My voice didn't break. It had to land like a verdict. Then I did the thing truth loves, I showed receipts. Names, bank transfers, a list of shell corporations. Petrova's wiring logs. The judge's consultancy invoices. The courier manifest from the Bahamas. I named the men in gray without hesitation. The camera zoomed, the freelancer's live comments spiking, 30, 40 people watching, then thousands. Suddenly the motel lobby was a stage bigger than any of us. They moved, one hand toward a pocket, another toward a radio. I smelled panic now, not confidence. "You'll try to call this politics," I said. "You'll try to call me mad. But I have witnesses, transfers, and a route they used to hide the money. You built a map to the lie. I brought a bulldozer." There was a scuffle. A flash of steel. But before the first blow landed, officers, local, tipped off by Claire's drive, burst from the van. The men's faces went from composed to raw. The lead suit's jaw worked like a man learning to swallow a verdict. The live feed didn't cut. Newspapers grabbed the footage. A senator's staffer tweeted the link. The courthouse where the little lies had been assembled opened its doors to subpoenas. The men in gray were handcuffed under the motel's neon. I stood in the drizzle, the drive now evidence, not ammunition. Claire's car streaked past, headlights on, and she returned to me like a comet. We didn't embrace. There was no cinematic reconciliation, only the small, true human relief of two people who'd decided to stop being afraid. The cameras lingered on my face, then on the documents. The silence after the storm wasn't empty. It was full of names read aloud, of ledgers balanced, of a system that had been counted and found wanting. The reckoning began not with fury but with proof. When I walked back into that hospital room, my son was awake, fragile, but alive. The beeping monitors, the sterile light, the smell of antiseptic, they all faded the moment his eyes met mine. And in that second, I knew I hadn't come home too late, I had come home just in time. Sometimes, life gives you one more chance, not to fix everything, but to understand what truly matters. Family. Truth. Forgiveness.